I think they're like really important. I think this year has made me realize that they're probably like one of the most important things. I feel like when I started out, I was just kind of making. I had no real kind of clear path or goal. I was making and like putting things on my website or on Etsy, and it didn't really. It was all really disjointed. But now that I've got like clear brand values in my head, I know what I want to achieve with my like business. It kind of gives me a path to like to know where to go to grow. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It almost gives you like a stronger purpose. And,
Yeah.
that's interesting what you said, because I can see how that would maybe not necessarily change your goals, but make them more cohesive across the board.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. I think brand values are one of those things that can really help set you apart. And, I think one of the things people struggle with the most as small businesses is like, oh, there's a million other people out there doing what I'm doing, which in some cases is true. Like some markets are more saturated than others, but you kind of have to find your own thing and the things that you care about. And like, that's what separates you. Your values are one of the things that separate you from someone else who's just like, oh, well, I really like making these lovely bags,
It makes you a bit more authentic as well, because you're obviously like creating and making things that you're passionate about, and like it's kind of like that's important to you, so it's gonna really shine through in your business as well, I think.
Yeah, and that authenticity is really important, because I don't know, I think social media is great. I think it's great for connecting us. I have a bit of a love-hate with it, because obviously there's some things that aren't so good. I think a lot of us are the same with it. It's a helpful business tool, and it's great for connecting people. Excuse me. But I think there's so much fake, especially on Instagram. There's so much of this like laptop lifestyle. Look at me working on the beach in Hawaii and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, all right. Or I seem to see them pop up all the time. I don't know if you get these, but like business coaches and things being like, oh, I'll get your business to making seven figures in 3 months and stuff. And you're like, all right, okay. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. Like the authenticity thing is important, because most people can see through that a mile away. Right.
Yeah.
And it's easier to be authentic if you're doing something you believe in. It's pretty difficult, I think, to build a sort of real strong brand around something that you actually don't care about.
Yeah, I just feel like that would be really exhausting.
I know. And like, how would you keep up that charade if it's so different from your personal life? Like, I don't see how that would work.
Living a lie all the time.
No, I think you're totally right. And I think one of the things that can be challenging, even when you do believe so strongly in your values, is communicating them with your audience. So can you tell us a little bit about that? So once you kind of pinpointed your key values or your key messages, how did you then communicate that to your audience?
So I tend to use social media a lot for that kind of purpose. I kind of like to talk about the materials that I use in like Instagram posts and stuff. So I've been doing like a weekly series where I've like been picking a material, and I've been talking about why I use it and kind of like where it's made and kind of like why I use it as well. So like things like my wax cotton, it's made in Dundee by a factory that's been making wax cotton since like the 1800s. So there's a lot of like history there as well, which I find really fascinating. But they're just down the road, and they're so lovely. But it's so great to be able to just like support another local business, but also like through my business as well.
That's really cool. And I think social media is great for that, because I don't know, I think gone are the days where like all you can do is just post a picture of your product and that's it. I mean, you can still do that sometimes, but if every single post you're doing is just a picture of something you made with no kind of context, that gets a little bit old after a while. But when you actually share a story like that, and people obviously love stories, that makes it a lot more special.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to kind of talk about the kind of slow fashion movement a lot more as well. So I'm kind of like trying to like, I'm doing a lot of like research, and I've already done like quite a bit of research into like stuff, because I love like reading data and stuff. It's like a weird hobby. So I like to like share kind of facts and things that I've learned on my kind of journey of like discovering the kind of slow fashion movement as well. And kind of just wee things like that, kind of sharing things that people can relate to and just kind of connect with, rather than just, I just say like a picture of a bag or a picture of like in my workshop or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think social media is such a good place to kind of communicate these messages, because people are looking for more than just a pretty picture these days. I think when Instagram started, it was very much like, it wasn't really about the caption or anything else. It was just like,
put X pro filter on and then on you go.
Oh, totally. And I think to some degree, like for some people that probably still works, but for most of us that are trying to establish a brand and grow a business, it makes sense to talk about this stuff. And I think, you know, like you were saying before, because you already care about this stuff, you read about it in your spare time, it's easy enough for you to incorporate that in quite naturally, rather than feeling like it's a push. Like, so did you feel once you sort of made the decision that you were going to create this content and do like a weekly bit about materials or talking about that side of things, did it just kind of go organically? Was it difficult or?
It kind of just happened, or like I just kind of meant to do like one post about like materials, but then I kind of really enjoyed it and I found it quite interesting. So I was like, I find it interesting. Hopefully someone else will find it interesting too. So I was like, maybe I'll do it for like everything. So I just kind of went from there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think too, like, you know, I was working with a client last week or 2 weeks ago who was saying to me, like, I know that it's really important to incorporate these values into my stuff, but I don't really know how to do it naturally. Like he felt there was quite a disconnect between his actual values and how to show them. So I don't know, do you have any tips for like coming up with ideas for things like that? Or did anything kind of help you get started or come up with those ideas? It's okay if you don't. I know I'm totally putting you on the spot. So.
I just started just kind of trying to think a wee bit out of the box and just taking like a product shot, like maybe finding what inspires you and maybe going from there. Like that's quite an easy thing to kind of start with, like what's your inspiration, and then kind of talk about that, and then kind of going from like maybe talking about like why you do what you do, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one, is the why, because well, yeah, and for most people their brand values tie into their why. Like most people don't start a small business because they want to get rich. You know, most people start a small business because they really care about what they're doing. So once you start thinking about your own motivations, that's a really good tip. That's a good starting point to kind of figure out. It might even help people figure out their values if they're not even sure what they are. And I also noticed, so you've got a section on your website where you kind of have got your values quite front and center. So is that something that you kind of decided to do from the start, or is that a newer development?
No, that's quite new. So my website, I'm like terrible for updating it. It sat like for about 3 years looking really sad and looking really samey. I was like, I will get to it one day. But no, I kind of used the kind of pandemic as a kind of push point to kind of actually start kind of, when I wasn't kind of making as much, when I couldn't get access to the studio the same, I kind of was like, right, this is the time that I can sit and dedicate to kind of like making this how I want it to be. So I wanted to make that like my materials and like my values and stuff, I wanted to make that quite transparent on my website so that you didn't need to follow my like Instagram and go through back like a million posts to like see what was important. It was just right there on my website. You can go read up about them all and all that kind of thing.
No, that makes sense, because I think social media is great, and yes, as small businesses, great tool, but people sometimes forget about things like their website and I mean, like I hate anything technical. I'm really not,
same.
Like I can handle the technical parts of a camera, but when it comes to like website and SEO and all that, I don't like it. So I now have somebody who I've hired on to kind of help with that stuff.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Honestly, well, she's a freelancer, so I say hired on. I book her for, you know, for the task at hand kind of thing. But I think for a lot of us, technical stuff is probably not our strong suit. If you're a creative person, you probably love doing whatever creative bits that you're doing, but not so much all that behind the scenes stuff. But I think having that on your website as well, I don't know, it's getting that same message out everywhere. So on your website, it's maybe easier to just have a static page or section on a page that states your values, whereas on social media, you're probably not, you know, you might have something in your bio, but you're probably not going to have a post that's just like, I care about this. You're much better to actually have a conversation about it. I guess if we kind of bring it back around to like, what kind of effect has this had on your business? So I know some of these are newer developments. You might not have seen the full effect yet, but have you had any customer feedback or even just audience feedback about your values? Has it helped you connect with them in a different way?
Yeah, I've had a few comments actually. They've been really enjoying like reading my kind of posts about like slow fashion, or just finding out about the materials I use. Like I've never talked about it before, but like as I started talking about it, people have like been like, really quite interested. So it's been kind of like inspiring to kind of keep doing it, kind of thing. It's been really positive so far, so it's been lovely.
That's great. And see, it's so nice when you get that feedback, because then you kind of go, okay, I'm on the right track with this. I didn't just think up this idea and have no idea if it's working. And how about, like, again, I know it's early days because you've kind of just done some of these things, but have you noticed a sort of increase in followers, or even different types of followers? Like maybe these people that are commenting, are they names you already knew, or?
It's a bit of a mix. There's been names that are commenting that I feel like I've not seen for a while, so I feel like maybe old followers that maybe have lost my page in the abyss of Instagram have maybe reconnected or something. And yeah, there's been a lot. I've had like a good few, couple hundred new followers since I kind of started doing this at the start of the year. So it's been really positive so far, and it's kind of like making me think of different ways I can take like my business as well. Like I'm kind of looking at kind of, as well as like making like bags and stuff, I'm kind of looking into kind of like doing like repair workshops and kind of like skill sharing workshops, and like kind of sewing and teaching kind of people to kind of how to look after their own kind of garments and stuff as well.
Oh, that's such a good idea, because I think for a lot of people, they would be quite happy to do some little repairs and keep a piece that they love, but they just don't know how to do it. So that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, so it's kind of like snowballed like loads of different ideas in my head. So it's like a lot of stuff to think about that I'm quite excited about, that I wouldn't have thought about if I hadn't kind of sat and kind of worked out what my kind of values were and what was kind of important to me.
That's so interesting, because I think you can totally stem new ideas from that. And I think for me too, like when I started this business, I thought I was just going to focus on photography. That was, that was kind of what I thought. And then I realized all of these small businesses that I'm working with are, are asking for bits of help with like brand stuff or content, or how can I actually use the photos. And you're right. It was when I went back to my values of like, okay, it's important to me to help small businesses grow and support small and local, and especially female led businesses and things like that. And then I realized, well, why am I not offering people help like more on a consulting basis or whatever? But yeah, you're right. The more you think about the brand values, the more that can kind of snowball into all these other opportunities that you might not have dreamt up.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm quite excited of where that goes as well, and to see where that takes me.
Well, yeah. And I think too, like, again, going back to all these business podcasts that I surround myself with, everybody talks about this idea of like diversifying your business. And I think lockdown has definitely shown us, you know, for a lot of people, you were saying like you struggled to get access to your studio. I couldn't offer in-person photography anymore. So having a business that's a little bit more diverse, it almost protects you a little bit, as well as just kind of more interesting and keeping you on your toes and providing new challenges. It's it gives you different income streams, and it also allows you to help different sets of people, because you might get somebody who, I don't know, say they're on quite a tight budget and they maybe can't afford to buy a bag from you, but they could afford to go to your workshop and learn how to do some of these things for themselves. And similarly to me, not everybody wants like a full rebrand with new photos and everything, but they might want to book a power hour because they're really feeling stuck on something. So I think it's really nice as well, because it means that you can share your skill set and your values with a wider range of people.
Yeah, I think like skill sharing, I feel like has been quite an important one for me as well. Just I feel like being able to like kind of pass on that kind of knowledge to kind of empower other people to kind of like repair and mend their clothes and make them last a bit longer. It kind of really it fits with my brand values, but also just kind of fits with me personally. I just feel like that would be something that I'd really love to do.
Yeah, and that's so important, because I think about this all the time, having conversations with other people about, say, like work-life balance, or the kind of projects you want to take on, or, saying no to something that isn't really the right fit for you or doesn't fit with your values. That's the whole point of having your own business, is that you can pick and choose, and you can say like, actually, I'm very strongly against that. I'm not going to take on that project, or, I don't want to work 60 hours a week because that's not sustainable, and I'm not happy when I work 60 hours a week and things like that. So I think it's important sometimes to remember that we went into entrepreneurship for a reason, and to allow ourselves to enjoy some of those benefits, like what you're saying, like do something that you really care about, because that's way more fun than forcing yourself into like, you know, pigeonholing into one thing that you're going to get bored of.
Yeah, I totally agree.
No, I think that's great.